What's wrong? Heltika looked across her nest bed to her husband. You have been reading that same page for quite some time, Pokili said knowingly. She clicked her beak in amusement and put down the tablet. Well, I was thinking about the new nanny. The Minarkan couple had been even more busy than usual for a while now, ever since Pokili had been appointed ambassador for Earth territory. The promotion was incredible, and he'd been staggeringly honoured, but they both knew it meant huge changes for their family. They had visited Earth twice over the past 11 cycles, both times to territories in Eurasia, and thought it wonderful. Moving there, however, was a whole other level from a visit. Arpillan sent you that list a few days ago, didn't she? He asked. I know changing nannies is a big decision, but I know how competent your assistant is. She wouldn't have chosen any but the best. It's not that exactly. I was speaking to a colleague and she pointed out that the vast majority of Earth diplomats who hire nannies hire natives from the world they're moving to, as long as the species is humanoid with similar appendages to prevent any difficulties. The human ambassador moving here hired a Minikan. At that point, Pokili put down his tablet. You want to hire a human? He asked, surprised. Heltika's feathers flared slightly. I don't know, but it's been on my mind all day. When they do that, they apparently bring the nanny to Earth to stay with them for some time until they move. That gives the nanny time to acclimate to their culture. But when the humans move to their embassy here, the Minikan nanny is already an expert on the planet. The children can ask them questions, and chances are they'll know the answer. It helps them to feel safe and comfortable, having someone by their side who is so knowledgeable. That's surprisingly practical, Pokili noted. Security is still human, though, I'm sure. Oh, yes, his wife said, with a dismissive wave of her hand. Like the ones we've been assigned. Physically, Simian against Avian is no contest, but... Her voice trailed off. You have concerns about a human nanny? Maybe a silly, but I don't want Enti and Plakena to feel pressured to act human, or to feel like Ritan is no longer their home. Your assignment is for 5 Earth cycles, but if you decide to stay for another term, by the end of it, Enti will be a teenager and Plakena will be making choices about college. No, I don't think it's silly at all, Pokili told her, taking her hand. Forgetting their home and their culture bristles my feathers too, but that's something we'll always be considering. I don't think the choice of species for the nanny will impact it as much as other factors might. Indeed, there will also be children from other planets they'll be interacting with, since children of interplanetary politicians and diplomats and such usually attend the same schools. Honestly, any humans who work for Minikans probably receive a huge amount of training about our world, our people, our cultures. From everything I've experienced, they're always excited to not just learn, but also to join in. Yes, that is true, Heltika noted with an amused flair. Using our greetings, attending our holiday celebrations, even our diet. I remember the visit from that human ambassador and her family. They needed to skip the next day's activities. Oh, when they ate too much fruit, Pokili exclaimed. Those poor people. I had no idea the digestive problems it could cause. But they did, she chuckled. I heard the parents cautioning the children who had a more balanced meal. But they themselves ignored that knowledge and were so determined to enjoy every part of their dinner that they made themselves sick. That's so very human, isn't it? It is. He squeezed her hand. On that note, I don't think the nanny will be too big a factor in how the children grow up while we're on Earth. We could even tell them our concerns, ensure the kids get the opportunity to play the same games, vid-chat with their friends, discuss what's going on back home. You're right. Heltika paused. It's certainly worth interviewing someone, at least. So if we want a human nanny for this level of position, I'll delegate that to Opulent. She can consult with someone knowledgeable on Earth. I'm sure they can find someone perfect for us. The day of the interview, Heltika didn't need her assistant to alert her as the time grew close. She'd been excited and anxious all morning, and closed out the work on her computer to leave her office earlier than necessary. She met Pokili in the greeting room on the first floor, And it wasn't long before Upperland brought a small tray of juices, placing them on the table between the sofa and the love seats. Both husband and wife poured themselves a cup of juice and sipped at it. Heltica then put hers down and opened the file on her tablet. Her name is Abigail Hobbs, she attempted to pronounce, and she is 23. To think at that age, having already been working for cycles to get a job on another planet, Earth hasn't even been part of the Federation for her whole life. Admirable, Pokili commented. Apparently, the human was eager for the interview as well, since only a few moments later, Upperland showed her in. Hello, said Heltica, standing up and walking over. It's wonderful to meet you. You as well. Heltica was prepared to reach for the human's hand, but instead, Abigail did a perfect head bob, so the Minican happily returned it. Going back to her seat on the couch, Abigail claimed one of the love seats. Your attire in your photograph is quite different, Pokili remarked. Indeed, and it appeared to be a uniform of some sort, Heltica noted, looking to her tablet. Was that a school uniform? The photo had Abigail wearing clothes of a duller palette, light brown and white, and some sort of cap, as well as a pair of white gloves. Yes, but so is this actually, Abigail replied, glancing down briefly. The university designed it specifically for placement with a Minican family because... You're not using a translator, Pokili exclaimed. Abigail blinked and smiled as Heltica's feathers flared in surprise, focusing on the human in front of her rather than the outfit. Sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt. That just took me by surprise. You're fluent? I am, she said. One of my 4 cycle classes was in Kalori, and then I spent a cycle immersed in it. I actually learned some of the basics as a teenager because one of my best friends is a Minican. We met on Galnet. I do have my translator with me at all times. There are some conversations that I would prefer to use it for, but I thought it would be strange to use it now. After all, I'll hardly be using it when it's just you and the children. Heltica bobbed her head, and she and her husband removed the gadgets from their ear holes. That's wonderful. We've met fluent humans before, of course, and your information listed both English and in Kalori, but I assumed it was on a basic level. I was told only 3 other species in the Federation attempt to learn to speak alien languages without the translator, even though they physically could, Abigail noted. It surprised me. You won't be surprised to hear it's usually a matter of pride, Pokili told her. I am familiar with the avians on Earth, and when they hear Inkalori under the translation, children have been known to giggle. We never know what it sounds like to others, but also there's a risk of misspeaking, not something that most of a certain social standing want to risk. Abigail nodded with a smile. I thought that might be it. The outfit you're wearing, Heltica noted. You said your school designed it? Yes. The outfit in the photograph you have is worn by many graduates who work with families on Earth, she replied, because it's a reflection of the professionalism of the nanny and the university we attended. But some families prefer their nanny not stand out as much, and here on Written, of course, bright colours are much more typical. The university believe that it would be best if others who see me with your family instinctively know we're together. That is clever, Pokili agreed, and I'm quite at ease with it. I'm sure the children and other Minicans will feel the same. Abigail nodded her agreement. Now, tell me, Heltica spoke, glancing to her tablet for a moment. It says here you went to a university for 4 cycles with a major in childcare, and then had 1 cycle of experience working in an Earth school. Minican owned, of course, with a name like Chitiki Fledglings, and is that it? It is, but it's not what you're imagining, Abigail told her. The university I attended is not standard. It's a school specifically to become a nanny. The Minican couple flared a bit in surprise. My first 3 cycles were for the standard degree, and then since I knew I wanted to work with a Minican family, on Earth or on Ritan, I also attended a 4th cycle. That's now an option for students who want to work for alien species. So far there are only 3 species you can select for that cycle. A university just for nannies? Heltica asked, leaning forward. I've never heard of such a thing. What did it involve? Oh, everything, Abigail said with a smile. At least that's what I felt like. You must understand we're always hired by families who are often in the public eye and have high social standing, like royalty. The school was opened hundreds of cycles ago, and in fact, their nannies were hired by royals in Britain and Greece. It's one of the reasons we're also trained in self-defense, because these children are so well known. Self-defense? Bakili asked in surprise. We have a human that's been assigned to us for security. Oh, of course, she said, nodding. But we're taught to be well-rounded, to have the confidence to step in when needed in emergencies. You all have personal vehicles on Earth, and I know how to drive evasively to evade paparazzi. I was even trained to fight off an attacker with one arm while holding a baby in the other. I trained with a baby doll, of course, she added with a grin, as the parents flared their crest feathers. But yes, not every family has security, and only on rare occasions do graduates use those skills. But humans have a saying, better to have it and not need it, than to need it and not have it. I see. I have to ask, as an aside, human royalty? Bakili asked, cocking his head. Not with any power, at least not for quite some time now, Abigail noted. But often as a monarchy gradually or suddenly lost their power, their wealth was still there, as were expectations of them from society. They and their families continued to be celebrities. I see. So you mentioned 4 cycles of school? Abigail clasped her hands in her lap. Yes, the first 3 are to learn to care for human children of all ages, although post-contact we are now also taught extensively about interaction with other species, she said. Depending on their age, children have different needs, from what's most educational to read to what kind of games can keep their attention and encourage their curiosity. So I can pack healthy snacks for a picnic, repair a damaged toy or clothing, discuss the animals we see at the park, and then play a game with them. Also, communication skills, observation skills, ethical practices, the mental part of the job. And in my 4th cycle it was similar, but specific to Minican children. They switched to written foods and clothing, the most popular new toys as well as classic games. I learned history and politics as well as basic medicine. And then when I graduated, I was placed on a probationary period with Chitiki fledglings. I was the only human working there, which is language immersion at its best. After 3 months, I wasn't wearing my translator at all. That is fantastic, Heltika spoke, her voice slow and contemplative. What ages were the children you worked with at the daycare? Minican Cycle 2 to Cycle 6, she answered. The best part of that was the practical exposure, I feel. I had so much experience in my younger years caring for human children, but, for example, the hygiene needs of someone with feathers is quite different than skin. When you were younger, Bakili repeated. You were in school until you were 17 Earth cycles, weren't you? Oh, human teenagers sometimes take on small jobs for extra money. I'd often spend several hours looking after the children of family, friends, and neighbours, Abigail explained. We call it babysitting. Human families usually have fewer generations because of our shorter lifespan, and most cultures consider it typical to move far from your family if you wish, so the parents hire a babysitter to go out for the evening without the children. Ah, of course. Someone mentioned that to me, Heltika said, averting her gaze thoughtfully. Might have been Upperland, as a matter of fact. Did you know you wanted to be a nanny, even back then? Bakili asked curiously. Abigail paused. I don't think so. By the time I was looking into colleges, I knew, but for a while, I assumed I would simply have a large family. Then as I got older, I realized what I wanted was more specific. I care for the children in my charge like they're my own, and I grow to love them, but I don't love them like they're my own children, because, of course, you two are there filling that role. Well said, Helgata remarked. That's a lovely philosophy. Abigail nodded once and smiled a thank you. I'm sure there are more things to cover, but I was wondering if you'd like to meet Enti and Plakena first. Have us all spend some time together, maybe play a game and chat, and see how everyone gets along. That sounds wonderful, Abigail replied. The Minikans got to their feet, and she did the same, following them out and down the hall. They took the stairs to the 2nd floor, and Heltika led the way to a room at the end, opening the door. Hello, little ones, the mother said, her feathers flaring happily. What are we up to? Enti is cheating, Plakena lamented, her feathers drooping. In front of her was a board game, and to her right was her younger brother. "I'm not cheating," Auntie protested. "He's trying his best," spoke up the Minican woman that had been in the room with them. She seemed amused. Getting to her feet, she gave Abigail a greeting head bob. "I'm Opalak. I heard you may be taking over my duties." Abigail returned the bob. "I'm Abigail. If everything works out, I very much hope so. It's an incredible opportunity." Opalak blinked and flared noticeably, presumably at the spoken Inkalori. "You don't have a translator!" Placano exclaimed, leaping to her feet. "I do, but I prefer not to use it." "I never heard a human speak Inkalori before." "How do I sound?" Abigail asked, tilting her head. Placana paused seriously before bobbing her head. "Pretty good, but you need more practice. It still sounds human." Abigail grinned. "You willing to help me with it?" "Sure." Placana suddenly darted over to her nest bed, grabbing a stuffed animal. "This is Grititi. She's magic. Did you know that? She's my favorite." "Grititi is wonderful," the human replied. "My favorite color is purple, though, so I love Richanti." The young girl's crest flared. "You know about the Flyers Club?" "I'm quite familiar with it. I'm sure you're much more of an expert, though." "I'll teach you about that, too," Blackanga declared. She looked to her brother. "Andy can teach you about Vitali Time, but not much happens on that show. It's really boring." "It's boring to you," Heldica said dryly, "because you're older. How about you finish this game and then start a new one with Abigail?" "We can just start a new one now," Blackena said, sitting back on the floor. "I told you, Enti's cheating." "Not cheating," Enti asserted. "How about I help Opalak keep watch and make sure everyone plays fair?" Abigail suggested, taking a seat on the third side of the board. "Then we can all play a game. I like to be the Grinklo, if that's okay." "Yep." Blackena leaned over and took the piece from the box, giving it to Abigail with a flourish. She paused, meeting Abigail's gaze. "Hey, you know this game too? How'd you know so much?" "I went to lots and lots of school," Abigail replied, "and then I played with little Minican kids for a whole cycle." The girl gasped. "Your job was to play?" "Well, some of it," the nanny said with a smile. Opalak chuckled knowingly. "All right, but if you have any questions, you can ask me," Blackena said, sitting up taller. Abigail glanced to her left and briefly caught the eyes of each parent in turn, noticing their crest feathers prickled upwards in satisfaction. "Okay, Enti, it's your turn. You only get one turn, so you can only press the button once."